For more on this, we're joined by Jennifer Parker. She's adjunct professor at the Defence and Security Institute at the University of New South Wales and a former naval officer. Jennifer, thank you so much for being with us. So I just want to firstly ask you about this Iranian ships off the Sri Lankan coast, because of course yesterday there was one struck and a number of people killed, but we're seeing today Sri Lanka saying that it's trying to rescue people off a second Iranian ship off its coast. What do you make of these developments? Are these a significant escalation?
Look, it is a significant escalation, and thank you for having me on. I think it's significant in a number of ways. The first, as you mentioned in your intro, it widens the geography of this conflict significantly into the Indian Ocean. Also, I think it shouldn't be lost on us that the location of which at least the first vessel has been targeted by a US submarine is a critical strategic location, 40 nautical miles from Sri Lanka, is on a major maritime trade route. And stepping outside of this conflict for a second, a major maritime trade route that China relies on. The reason I highlight that is I think that partially this was about sinking the Iranian Navy, which the US has said is one of their key military objectives. But I also think it's partially about signalling other countries, including China, regarding the US's capability and willingness to use that capability.
And Iran's Revolutionary Guard say that they've hit a US tanker today in the northern part of the Gulf. So obviously this is having its repercussions almost immediately.
Well, whether this was a direct response to the attack in the Indian Ocean, that's not clear. But certainly the Iranian Revolutionary Guard has been looking for broader targets across the Persian Gulf. Now, with the Iranian Navy, which is different to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Navy, but their conventional Navy pretty much having been sunk, their bases pretty much having been, I don't want to use the term obliterated, that brings up connotations, but destroyed in Bandar Abbas and Konarak, they are looking for different targets. Now, we do know that the strength of Iran's capability is their ballistic missile and drone capability. And so they are clearly using this to target broader merchant shipping now across the Persian Gulf. But they have very long-range ballistic missiles, as we've seen over the last couple of days of this conflict. The key priority for the US now needs to be keep targeting those ballistic missiles to reduce the impact. We saw some reports of reduced ballistic missiles being fired. We saw Dan Kane from the US Joint Chiefs of Staff say that the ballistic missiles were being fired at a rate that's 86% less what they were at the beginning of the conflict. But still, getting rid of these ballistic missiles has to be priority.
Jennifer, on that point, the US Central Command saying there has been a dip in Iranian launches since the war began. Is this Iran running low, or could it be potentially Iran looking to preserve its stockpiles?
Look, it is likely both. We did see towards the end of the 12-day war last year that the salvo sizes, so the number of missiles Iran was firing at Israel at one time, was reducing. So clearly they had a strategy of preserving. So it is probably partially that. We know the US doesn't think that they have hit all or nearly all of Iran's ballistic missile capability, bearing in mind that at the beginning of this part of the conflict, so before the 12-day war, there was an assessment that Iran had about 3,000 ballistic missiles in its inventory. Israel assesses that they destroyed about a third of those during that conflict. So there were general figures that they thought Iran would have about 2,000 at the moment. So part of the US's strategy to start working inwards into Iran with their bombing campaigns is about finding and targeting these ballistic missile silos.
On the weapons stockpile, I mean, the US and Iran have both been touting their supply, but what kind of ability do the GCC countries have to keep intercepting these? And are they going to have to start looking to find more interceptors to deal with missile strikes running for potentially more days or weeks?
Well, look, this is difficult to know because countries don't openly talk about their missile stocks, as you can imagine. Certainly there is a lot of reporting out there and rumours that some of the countries are running low. Qatar has come out and said they have more than enough interceptors. Most likely they have been caught off guard with just how many missiles Iran has managed to fire at them since the beginning of this conflict on the 28th of February. Now, the challenge with these interceptors, of course, is they are so expensive and so time-consuming to build. We do also know that the GCC countries have been reinforced with US-owned Patriot and THAADs with their own interceptors, which would be boosting them. But potentially they'll get to the point where Ukraine has in Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine, where they're having to ration them. And that is making tactical choices about what they shoot down and what they don't. They're not going to be able to get everything if they're running low, so they may focus on shooting down the long-range ballistic missiles, but let things like the Shahed drones go through, which means they're going to accept wearing some damage. I don't think they're there yet, but that's what will happen if they start to run low on interceptor stocks.
And what could that potentially look like, letting those Shahed drones come through? And how would they make those decisions on which they may decide to intercept and which they don't?
Well, look, this is a really difficult national decision that any country needs to make. I'm not sure that they are there yet. But part of it is understanding what is the critical infrastructure that you need to protect. So your energy network, your critical defence bases, and focusing on protecting those with your interceptor capability. And then anything, whether it be a drone or a ballistic missile that is heading towards something different, then accepting that that is going to impact with potentially collateral damage. And this is some of the hard decisions that Ukraine has had to make during their conflict as they have run low on these air defence missiles. So again, we're not there yet, but if they do start to run low, these are some of the choices that are going to have to be made at the tactical and operational level within these countries.
And what about the production of these weapons? I mean, are they able to keep up with the tempo of the conflict that we continue to see? I mean, what is the kind of time frame, I guess, for developing these sorts of weapons?
Well, look, this is in many ways a $1 million question. Look, we do know broadly that the US cannot keep up production with the amount of THAAD interceptors and Patriot interceptors they have been using, not only during this conflict, also during the 12-day war and in their support to Ukraine over the last couple of years. Because these are so exquisite to build, they take a significant amount of time. I guess the question on everyone's mind is, are they going to run out, and is this a maths game? I think it is a maths game. I don't think they're about to run out yet. There is a focus on increasing production. Will that have an impact on this conflict? It really depends on how long it goes. But the best strategy right now is trying to reduce Iran's stockpile of ballistic missiles, which is hitting those silos across the country.
Jennifer Parker, adjunct professor at the Defence and Security Institute at the University of New South Wales and a former naval officer. Thank you so much for your insights with us here on TRT World.